We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Space. Any one of us can walk outside our doors on a clear night and gaze out at the brilliant sky and ask the big questions. What more exists out there in the vast universe? Are there other planets like ours? And yet, as we look out into the magnificent cosmos, we must ask ourselves, what are we striving towards presently in terms of manned space exploration? What more can we be doing to bridge the gap from where we started to where we are today?
When I grew up, and I was like 8 years old in the 70s, at the beginning of the 70s. Every single kid wanted to be an astronaut. It was just the way it was. He's like, this was it. They were out there on the cutting edge. This is what you wanted, and everybody wanted to be one. It was just so neat, and it was more of an attitude like, this is where everybody wants to go, wants to become, and everybody's like, oh yeah, that's it. And you thought of them going to the moon as we went to the moon. It wasn't, oh, the government did it. It was like, oh, no, we did it as a people. We all worked together. I don't see that nowadays.
There was a lot of fear back in the 1960s, and so that really drove it. And there's an old story that the NASA budget, that they took what they thought they'd need, and then they multiplied that number by 3, and then they multiplied that number by 3 again. So I think NASA was something like 5% of the governmental budget back in the 1960s.
As a child, we grew up in an era where we saw space exploration in process. People were going to the moon, and it was exciting. And then we had some changes, and science continued, space exploration continued, but completely in a different format.
So once the shuttle program ended, it was a sense of disconnect because a lot of people sensed that NASA was just done as a whole. But what they lacked realization on is that they still continued research and did space exploration with unmanned missions.
I think nowadays we have a different society, very different society. We don't have such a national grouping. We have to think internationally. If we're going to do it, it's going to be a world thing.
Universities like the Physics and Astronomy program at Texas A&M Commerce are branching out to real-world communities to keep their students connected. Students are encouraged to apply for internships with NASA and other programs that foster space exploration endeavors.
Going to Mars is a real challenge for humans, and the reason for that is Mars is far away. And to get there, if you do what they call the minimum energy orbit, which takes the least amount of rocket fuel and the most that you could get there, it takes 6 months to get there. And then the Earth and Mars have to line up such that to get back would take another 6 months, but that's only 2 years later. So the whole trip is about 3 years, and you have to be completely self-sufficient for 3 years. There's no way anybody could come help you if anything went wrong.
We're sending vehicles to Mars for exploration. A lot of experiments going on, a lot of information being learned, and I think one day we'll go there. Seeing young kids come in, they're starting to get that fever again for, I want to be an astronaut.
But nothing fires the imagination of, well, everybody, as to actually have a human out there, they're doing it.
So the more people that we can keep excited about astronomy, the better it is for all of us. So our goal is education. We try to keep everybody educated with all the neat stuff that's going on in this field.
Yes, it's absolutely exciting and thrilling, and our kids are being exposed to that. My children didn't have that when they were little. They're now grown, but their children will. And so there is a gap, but I think that gap is closing. We're getting to see it come full circle again.